It's time, my beautiful ace colonists. The release of Sonic X Shadow Generations is just around the corner, and all 3 episodes of Dark Beginnings are finally here. After being frankly blown away by the Knuckles Divergence prologue back before Sonic Frontiers, I had every reason to be hyped for this. And boy oh boy did it not disappoint. A more serious tone to re-establish Shadow and his lore, beautiful animations and epic combat sequences, higher quality voice acting to help get us invested in these characters again, and one of the most requested reunions of all time? When it comes to what the fans expect when it comes to Shadow, these shorts had a lot to live up to. Yet somehow, for me at least, they've exceeded all expectations, and I'm one of the complainiest little shits you'll ever come across. So, let's jump into the majesty that is Dark Beginnings and get started, shall we? The first episode, entitled Shadow and Maria, opens with what looks to be a familiar scene. Shadow and Maria running down an arc corridor to escape the pursuing gun soldiers. Except that when Maria turns to Shadow, it's not fear in her eyes, it's excitement, telling him,
"Hurry! You have to see this!"
Ah, a bit of a bait and switch, eh? Okay. Putting the horror we all know lies ahead fresh in our minds before showing us something wholesome. This show is toying with my emotions already, and I love it. Turns out Maria just wanted to show Shadow the Aurora Borealis. This was a really cute scene, and I love that not only can you tell just how excited Maria is about one day visiting Earth, but that she also wants to share its beauty with Shadow. But it's while explaining this amazing phenomenon to Shadow that we're reminded exactly why a young girl like Maria lives in space. Her excitement aggravating her condition to the point she feels faint. As expected though, Shadow is right there to help her. It's cool that they're actually building on the lore here, and that it also makes sense. The exposition from Shadow that Maria's condition is kept in remission by the Ark's anti-gravity is really interesting. I always assumed that it was Maria's immune system that prevented her from living on Earth. Her condition is called neuroimmune deficiency syndrome, but sure enough, if you read page 119 of the Sonic Encyclopedia, this exact explanation has been right there since 2021. Kudos to Ian Flynn for attempting to tie all this together, because more consistent lore can only be a good thing for the series going forward, especially when it comes to deeper characters like Shadow. And let's face it, as a giant Sonic nerd, I eat all this stuff up. Apologizing to Shadow for worrying him, Maria says that she just can't help being excited about the two of them going to Earth together. But Shadow doesn't seem to share her excitement. As something that was created in a lab, he's not sure there's a place for him on Earth. And above all else, he can't hide his frustration that his existence hasn't led to a cure for Maria yet. Despite my past reservations about Kirk Thornton as the voice of Shadow, and let me be clear, this dude is immensely talented, it's not a case of him not being a good voice actor, he just hasn't been able to provide me with a Shadow I can enjoy. That is, until these shorts.
The low gravity here only keeps your condition in remission. You should know better than to exert yourself. I was created here. I don't know if there's a place for me on Earth. Professor Gerald made me the ultimate life form. I should be the key to all manner of medicines. Curing you.
That snarkiness that usually envelops every word he speaks is now gone, and we can now hear Shadow's signature gruffness as well as his softer side. Clearly, it's always been an issue of voice direction. The guy is literally only now being told about Shadow's past and what his motivations are.
Up until recently, I hadn't gotten to explore his history. I hadn't gotten to explore what happened with Maria and how he was created and his whole mission in life.
So, is it really any surprise he hasn't delivered a great Shadow until now? Madness. Like the flick of a switch, Maria comforts Shadow and immediately calms him down, saying how she's just as happy to spend time with him and her grandfather here as she would be on Earth. But just then, a large explosion interrupts their conversation, and a Merle is seen emerging from the flames. But just when your brain is trying to figure out timelines and how Shadow is possibly seeing a Merle here and now, Maria says that the robot is heading straight for her grandfather's lab. And as she grabs Shadow's hand, he sees the briefest flash of the gun soldiers who will end Maria's life. Shaking it off, he leaves to check on Gerald, promising Maria he'll be back. This short captures that cinematic feel perfectly, and it really just makes me crave something exactly like this but in a longer form. I'd watch a TV show or movie of this, and I think many other people would too. With the release of Dragon Ball Daima, imagine being able to add a new Sonic anime to our watch list as well.
Hey, I can dream, can't I?
Rushing to Gerald's aid, Shadow walks in just as Emerl has him by the scruff of his shirt. And cue awesome fight sequence number 1 of this series. This scene is choreographed to perfection, demonstrating not only Shadow's insane fighting abilities, but also Emerl's ability to learn from and reproduce his opponent's abilities. Kinda makes me want to go back and play Sonic Battle again. Shadow eventually lands a punch on Emerl, but rather than making contact, he instead breaks a huge pane of glass, shattering the illusion and making it clear that none of this is real. Even Shadow knows that something is wrong. He knows the gun soldiers stormed the Ark and erase all evidence, but it's all happening too quickly. As he's struggling to make sense of everything, the room is tilted and Shadow falls, shattering another illusion as he's dumped into Gerald's cell on Prison Island. I always thought what happened to Gerald and his warnings to the world was pretty chilling, but this scene adds a whole new layer of creepy on top of it. Shadow sees flashes of Gerald screaming with rage as images of gun soldiers clip in and out, representing the maelstrom of grief and rage in Gerald's mind after the events on the Ark. Shadow tries his best to reach him, but he can't. Chasing him down an endless hall, he ends up in a void of floating debris and broken memories, culminating in visions of Maria as she's pierced through the back, her image shattering from the heart outwards. Holy shit, this is awesome. In the glow of 3 familiar eyes, Shadow is grabbed by 3-fingered hands as he's jolted awake in the present day. Convinced that was no mere nightmare, Shadow wonders if Black Doom could be back, and we get a beautiful shot of the broken moon with its debris floating in a ring around its orbit. A scar, in a way, left by his own hands back in Sonic Adventure 2. And as the Space Colony Ark is reflected in its light, Shadow wonders if the answers to Black Doom's return may lie there, back where it all began. Episode 2, Finding the Way.
Do you know the way?
Oh god. Unlike the first episode, this one opens with a true flashback to 50 years ago. Maria is entering a lab when she bumps into another kid. A kid who anyone familiar with Shadow 05 will probably recognize, but for everyone else, meet Abe, the future gun commander who always seems to have a chip on his shoulder when it comes to anything related to Shadow. And here we get to see that dynamic started out nice and early.
Tell that freak to stay away from me!
Shadow is lost in thought, staring at a tank containing a death leech, a Black Arms alien. Whatever he's thinking about is troubling him as his eyes and mouth begin to twitch and grimace. But as fast as his poor state of mind came on, all it takes is Maria's touch to snap him out of it. He talks with her about his concerns around the circumstances of his creation, saying he may look like a hedgehog, but in reality he's no different than this ugly, heartless creature. I love that we now actually get to see Shadow have these thoughts and doubts about his origins, even before his whole amnesia arc. It's stuff like this that I always wondered about the character, and it's cool that we actually get to see it now within the canon. It's interesting that Shadow actually knew about his origins in Sonic Adventure 2. Thanks to his subsequent amnesia after that game, we only get to see him learn of his origins 2 games later. So it's cool to have a whole new spin on his frame of mind all the way back in his debut game. As Shadow continues to put himself down by comparing himself to this creature, you can see Maria actually begin to fade away from the shot, signifying just how alone Shadow must feel. But she quickly comes back. Wrapping Shadow in a huge hug, she tells him he's wrong.
You have a big heart. It may be difficult for you to express it, but I know that deep down you really do care. About me. About everyone.
Maria is Shadow's anchor. She keeps him grounded and seems to be the only one who can pull him out of the abyss when his intrusive thoughts take over. When Shadow's heart is in flux or his emotions are conflicted, she's always there to calm him and pull him back into the light. And it's amazing that we now get to see all this front and center. Why it is that Shadow loves Maria so much, and why she had such a big impact on him. Just when I thought their friendship couldn't be any more wholesome already, these shorts come along and shatter all expectations. The Sonic series is making me feel things again, and I love it. This is all overheard by Abe, who obviously is deathly against Shadow knowing how he was made. But I don't care what Abe thinks. Shadow is my boy, and the sins of the father should never follow the son. And in my book, Gerald is Shadow's dad anyway. Biology is the easy part, your dad is who raises you. It was interesting to see them canonize the name Abe for our future gun commander. I wonder if you told Ian Flynn when he wrote that old Archie comic that it would someday become the canon name for the character if he would have believed you. Poor Commander Walters. How do we tell him? Back in the present day, Shadow is searching for a spaceship to reach the Ark. And since the Pyramid Base in Sonic Adventure 2 had one, he figures melting his way into another Eggman Pyramid Base is a good place to start. Shadow is ruthless. In yet another amazing fight sequence, he demolishes hordes of Shogun-style Eggman robots. Carrying out one of the most stylish badnik kills this series has ever seen, he skewers this poor guy with his own sword. But by far the coolest thing about this episode is that we get a freaking Team Dark reunion. Omega tells these inferior models to fear him as he mercilessly rains down bullets on them, and Rouge makes her grand entrance silhouetted by the moon before covering Shadow's back from a flanking bot. She always did know how to make an entrance, didn't she? It's just a coincidence that put these three wayward souls together again, but that doesn't stop them picking right back up where they left off. Fighting while chatting, Rouge tells Shadow that she's here on a recon mission for Gun, and that Omega came along as her backup. Like he needed an excuse to murderize some Eggman robots.
Kill.
Shadow tells Rouge he's here for a spaceship so he can reach the Ark, and that he fears the Dark Arms may have returned. I love that the trust these guys all used to share is still there. Both sides willing to share their mission as well as help each other out. None of that.
I'm more than enough on my own. I'll handle things my way.
Crap. Like Shadow's voice direction, Rouge actually sounds pretty good here. But the dark horse for me is probably Roger Craig Smith as Omega. I never thought Omega would sound good again after John St. John was replaced, but Roger is actually really good. And while, as always, he doesn't get to say a whole lot, his one-liners are just poetry. Particularly him always shouting dibs for the strongest opponents. Honestly, it kills me when I think just how long we've been missing this. These types of interactions, these types of stories, the adventures that these three fan favorites could have went on together. Instead, we got over a decade of Team Dark were never friends. But clearly, that's no longer the case, because watching these guys now, they haven't missed a beat. And if their popularity and the fans' hunger for more of them isn't obvious to Sonic Team now, I don't even know what to say. After the fight, Rouge tells Shadow that she can help him find a spaceship, if he agrees to come to Sonic's birthday party. I've never seen a character's reaction channel my own so well when it comes to social situations. It's funny though, Shadow complains about Sonic's party, but I bet he didn't whine about going to Amy's birthday. Dude definitely has a soft spot for the ladies. Knowing him well enough to take his grunt as approval, Rouge suggests they try a gun base for his spaceship. Episode 3, To the Ark, starts with the trio in an elevator at said gun base. Surrounded by the remains of the mechs they trashed, Rouge is dropping some exposition about how Gun funded the creation of Shadow, only to lock him away for 50 years. She knows too well how mistreated Shadow was, but she asks that he not let any vendettas get in the way here. On a side note, Omega trying to scrape the severed mech arm off his foot here tickled me way more than it should have. I love this guy. Then Shadow responds to Rouge's request for a level head with probably one of the best lines I've heard in this series in a long time.
Gun is not my enemy tonight. Just an obstacle in my way.
This is how you write Shadow. This is how you voice Shadow. This line is totally badass, and unlike any other recent tough guy talk from Shadow, it comes off with absolutely zero cringe.
Don't show your pathetic face around me ever again.
Hats off to Ian Flynn and Kirk Thornton here, that was awesome.
I call dibs.
I love this guy. The next minute and 20 seconds of this short is the purest joy and spectacle you could imagine, as Shadow and Omega buy Rouge time at the computer by taking on a piloted aerial gun mech. This shot of Omega is just everything, grinding along a narrow catwalk, sparks flying from his minigun as he rolls it along the ground beside him. There's no reason a robot should try and look cool, but that's just who Omega is. He calls dibs on the biggest fucking enemies he can find and looks good while destroying them. I love this guy. Shadow is also an absolute machine during this fight. Taking a page out of Movie Sonic's book, he catches an enemy missile and returns it to sender. They're really leaning into Shadow's Chaos Snap ability recently, and honestly, it makes him look pretty much unstoppable. Nobody wants to be this mech pilot. Using the Yellow Emerald to invoke full Chaos Control, Shadow stops time and destroys every missile the mech fired, before crippling it completely with a homing attack. Ripping off the pilot's canopy, we're meant to get the impression that Shadow's about to knock this dude's lights out. But since, Shadow is a good guy, he instead punches the ejector seat mechanism, saving the pilot from the exploding mech.
I wanted to destroy it.
I love this guy. But just as Shadow reaches the shuttle and Rouge begins the launch sequence, the unauthorized launch alarm sounds and a virtual army of gun mechs and turrets are trained on the rocket. Just as it looks like Shadow is about to be blown out of the sky, a familiar face orders all forces to stand down, allowing the ship to reach space safely. Quick to try and smooth things over with the commander, Rouge hands over the intel she stole from Eggman. Intel that seems to detail his plans for the Time Eater. As annoyed as he is about the damage to gun property, Abe is more disappointed that Shadow chose to attack the base rather than ask for permission, saying if it was to save the world, he would have been happy to help. But Rouge reminds him, when has Shadow ever asked for permission? He scolds her for not talking Shadow down from the attack, but Rouge again reminds him that only one person could ever do that, and he knows exactly who she's talking about. Holy shit, guys, this dialogue is just perfect. Can we get a full anime in this style now, please? All the characterizations are just absolutely on point, and the thought of a full game with this level of writing just really makes me look forward to the future of this series. Sonic really is in a good future timeline. The episode ends with Shadow approaching the Ark, his mind wandering again to thoughts of Maria. The song they composed for this whole section fits perfectly. No longer does he have Maria to pull him from the abyss, and as he has to snap himself out of thoughts of what might have been, he tells himself to stop it. That life was taken from him long ago. For now, he just has to focus on the mission at hand. Even after having a fair idea what these shorts would be about going in, I'm still not sure I was quite prepared for the two emotional extremes it invoked. From the sheer nostalgic bliss of watching my favorite team reunite, to the crushing heartbreak of seeing Shadow struggle with Maria's death again. What these shorts make clear is that his bond with her is unbreakable, and despite him working through his loss already, it seems all he really did was push it deep down. And in reality, it's just a wound he'll never heal from. These shorts somehow managed to make their bond even more meaningful, and now I have a fresh perspective on Shadow's character, even in the older games I've already played. On a brighter note though, Team Dark looks to still be a thing after all. I'm not sure how Sonic Team could look at these shorts, or fan reactions to them and come to any other decision. These guys could sell games, comics, movies, and TV shows all by themselves. And as someone who has championed their return for years, I'm really excited to see what the future now holds for them. On reflection, these shorts were such a mixed blessing, because I would love more than anything to get something like this in longer form. But at the same time, I also have to recognize that every second of their runtime is filled with incredibly interesting stuff. So I guess, really, I can be nothing but happy with them. They're probably the perfect intro to Sonic X Shadow Generations. And a huge kudos to Ian Flynn, GigX, and everyone else involved. They all did a fantastic job. But now, I'd love to hear what you guys think. Did you enjoy Dark Beginnings as much as I did? What did you make of its updated take on Shadow and Maria? Is the future bright for Team Dark? And most importantly, are you now more excited for Sonic X Shadow Generations? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. As always, don't forget to like and subscribe, and make sure to turn on notifications to see more from me. If you'd like to support the channel and see your name credited at the end of my videos, you can become a patron on Patreon or a YouTube channel member. Any support is much appreciated, and a huge thank you to the awesome people who already have. But for now, a big thank you for watching. And as always guys, take care.